This is Barbara Jones from ICRT, OCDC's research arm, welcoming everyone to today's session. And as typical, we give our participants a moment to join in and to tell us where they are calling from. Please feel free to use the chat box and let us know where you're calling from. Some of colleagues we know by name and by face, but some of them we don't. So when you are able and willing, please tell us where you're calling from and what organization you are with. We are obviously interested. We are starting today a session that is dedicated to issues of digitalization. This is a broad area, and as we all know, very, very up to speed. You have to be up to speed in those technological issues in order to really manage and operate efficiently in today's world. We have asked, while colleagues were registering for the session, we have asked the question in the registration to tell us how they perceive this issue. What are the most important digitalization tools that they are using, or what they consider the most important and interesting. This will be our introductory slide, which we'll show you in a second. If you could please move to the second slide, I want to say a word about our agenda today. So after we glance at those registration comments, I will introduce our speaker today, and he will introduce both his organization and walk us through his presentation of the digital system that he and his colleagues are using. This will be followed by question and answers and comments section, and at the end we are going to take a quick Menti poll, which Silandi, our communications officer, is going to administer. So this is our agenda for today. Again, welcome everyone. And please, let's take a look at those registration comments. As you see, there is quite a long list of these comments, and these are not only related to specifically agricultural field. I think they are a pretty diverse group of comments and technologies that are being used. We will hopefully add the platform that will be explained today by colleagues from hiveonline. But as you see, there is quite a lot here about the phone and the technologies that allow for better and quicker communication. And these are quite interesting, and I hope that our colleague from hiveonline will be able to also make a reference during his presentation to at least some of those mentioned here, technologies. So again, welcome everyone. People are still joining, so we will hope to have everyone join in also in our chat room and tell us where they are calling from and what organizations they are with. And without the further ado, I want to introduce our guest speaker today. And please move to the next slide. This is going to be Matthew or Matt Mintz. Matthew has worked in a number of globally significant banks. So he has a very strong financial background, both in strategy and execution. He has worked on investments and retail and wealth banking, and he has achievements which include designing and deploying bank-wide business-critical applications and partner negotiations. Matt is going to be the speaker of today, and I invite Matt to tell us both about his organization, hiveonline, and about his colleagues, including Yvonne Karani. Matthew is based in Sweden. Yvonne is based in Kenya, and the whole team spans the globe. So Matthew, please let us know, how are things in your corner?
Hi, Barbara, and thank you for the introduction. I must say thank you for the brief bio. I must say that having had a background in investment banking and working for large banks, the two things that really led me to start hiveonline were that traditional banking really wasn't meeting the people who meeting the needs of the people who needed it most, and that there was a lot of technology that emerging that really could start to make a difference. And I think you'll see that as an underlying theme in what hiveonline is trying to do around really bringing the best of finance and technology to communities who today are underserved in both senses. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So I'll briefly talk you through a little bit about hiveonline, as us as a company and where we come from, and what the challenge we're trying to solve, and how we're trying to do that. And you'll see that cooperatives and community groups are a key part of how we're trying to solve the key challenges around financial inclusion and market access for communities in sub-Saharan Africa. Then I'll talk you through some of the specific challenges we've experienced in building our solutions, and in working in partnership with other organizations we've worked through together. Not saying at all that we've solved all of those, but hopefully this gives an element of understanding and awareness about some of those challenges. Maybe those resonate, maybe there are other innovative solutions that people on the call have come across that we can discuss in the Q&A as well. I'll give you a brief demo of our myCoop solution, showing how we've taken all of that and put it into action and what we've done, and then we can break into a sort of question and answer session to discuss a little bit more. So a little bit about hiveonline. If my slides are going, now I pressed twice because that's the way. Ooh. Right, hiveonline. So we're trying to build sustainable digital finance for underserved communities. Typically what that looks like is engaging with cooperatives, savings groups, farmers groups in sub-Saharan Africa, who today do a lot of their operations on paper, are not able to engage as well or as easily with their wider ecosystem, the economy that they would like to be able to trade with or to get financial support from, and rely on sometimes structures of middlemen and other organizations that make it a lot harder to actually engage. We as a company have come as per my bio and my co-founder Sophie's biography as well, is very much based in global financial institutions and technology. And we have a background in also advising large organizations on sustainable finance and sustainable uses of blockchain. But we're very much aware that we want to combine the best of our sort of experience and knowledge with deep understanding of the problems with the communities that we were working with, which is why 90% of our team are based in sub-Saharan Africa. Our development team's in Kigali, Rwanda, and we're building a team out in Nairobi, Kenya as well as having other team members in Mozambique and Madagascar right now. But what's the solution we're trying to solve? Ultimately, as I said, there are a lot of groups doing a lot of really good work, especially smallholder farmers, trying to grow crops in a lot of adversity with climate change challenges, sometimes political and political unrest or civil unrest, and struggles with their own poverty and access to finance. But still, they're trying to do a good job. There are a lot of groups on the right-hand side who are actually trying to support these communities, but actually struggle to reach them, partly through geographical challenges, partly through understanding, knowledge, information, and access to that information. So what we're trying to do at hiveonline is sort of act as that catalyst or bridge between those two organizations, using the power of financial technology and digitization to link these two, and hopefully create a virtuous cycle which can lead to both the groups and the smallholder farmers benefiting, growing, but also making a sort of compelling use case for these organizations to engage with these groups as well. I sort of wanted to... Was there a question there? Or was that someone needs to go on mute? Please, I should have said that if anyone does have questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, right, I'll carry on. This is just a sort of an overview of the breadth of that ecosystem that we're trying to look at, and some of the benefits that we're trying to catalyze through this. Obviously, for organizations like cooperatives and farmer groups, they're our end user, who is very much somebody we're trying to support, both with financial inclusion and market access, but also with NGO engagement and other aspects. But that for this to be beneficial and to work, there needs to be benefit for other partners in here as well. Typically right now, we work with a lot of NGOs who experience benefits through the digitization in improved monitoring, being able to measure their impact far better. But also a lot of the supply chain organizations that these groups supply their produce to ultimately don't see those end farmers. They don't know who they are, they don't know where they exist. And both from a corporate or social responsibility perspective, but also in a commercial aspect, when trying to understand your supply chains, there are, I think, improvements that can be made that some organizations see. As well as obviously financial services, being able to offer financial products like microfinance loans or even larger loans, and link with these groups that are currently excluded from the financial ecosystem, as well as a bigger picture around government support and growth for these communities as well. So we've been a company since 2016, but actually really focused in sub-Saharan Africa since about 2020, where we started working in Mozambique. Mozambique's our sort of most developed market right now, and we've digitized over 100 cooperatives. It's worth saying that in Mozambique, the definition of a cooperative is a relatively smaller group that ranges between 20 and 50 smallholders, but then that organized into regional unions and groupings as well. Obviously, in other areas like Kenya, there are large cooperatives that we still think we have a part to play, especially when it comes to a slightly more decentralized engagement with individual farmers in regions. But we're looking at addressing that, and I'll mention that in a minute. One of the key parts of what we're trying to do is to be fully compliant and really sort of integrate with the existing banking solutions, and why we're, as part of the regulatory sandbox in Mozambique, we'll be able to provide mobile money and third-party lending to these groups, really to provide those linkages on a financial level as well as a data level. And we've built a set of partnerships across all of those actors that we've mentioned in the previous slide to really build that digital ecosystem to support these cooperatives that we work with. In Kenya, we're slightly smaller right now. We've only set up this year, to really grow, and have digitized some farmer groups, but really looking right now to establish more relationships and partnerships in this area to grow those farmer groups and the linkages with them as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit, because I think this is the sort of the interesting piece, that bringing all of these pieces together, and digitization especially, what are the challenges, and is this even possible, and how do we sort of look to overcome those? The first challenge that I think a lot of groups face is lack of infrastructure. Can we actually introduce digital solutions to these communities? And it's definitely a challenge. Okay. Obviously, there is different levels of mobile connectivity, which makes it difficult. Also, literacy and digital literacy become a challenge, and this affects women far more than it does men, because they typically have less access, less education. The men typically own the phones in relationships where there is. How we've looked to address that is really to take a group approach and sort of diversification approach. And I think this sort of is why we focused around groups like cooperatives, because we provide one smartphone device per group, which then is used by a community member in order to include all the rest of those members of those groups. Our experience feels that it's not feasible to digitize every single member of those groups. Where possible, where farmers do have a feature phone, then we send SMS receipts to keep them as engaged as possible. But we also feel that this needs to be, as best as possible, inclusive for everyone, which is why we've taken this approach. We've built it as a web app so that it can work on pretty much any device with a browser, and had to do a lot of work to make sure that it can work in places with patchy connectivity and offline scenarios. That's something that we're increasingly doing. And obviously we hope that connectivity in these rural areas increases, but it's currently always a challenge. We're looking at how to do it, sort of build in multilingual capabilities, and we've sort of already got, I think, 7 different languages available on the application. But as I said at the beginning, we've also tried to empower the digital savvy members of those groups. And I think it's also something where we're trying to include youth into this, and see that there's a big element that youth, with their adoption of digital skills far quicker, can really help to empower the whole group in the scenario. The second challenge is, I think, obviously 2 big themes here around market access and financial inclusion. And both of them are obviously very important. But one of the things that we've seen is that it's very difficult to have one without the other, but they need to be married up in the right way. So I think, sort of looking at time as well, I'll just move on to the solutions here, or how we've tried to solve that. Oh, okay, sorry, my computer's just being a bit slow. And again, this is one of the reasons why cooperatives form a big part of this, which is that both in market access and financial inclusion, challenges is building a reputation. It's far easier to trade with somebody if you can trust them and you know who you're working with. In the same way, it's easier to lend money to groups where you know who they are. And by working with organizations and groups of farmers, and digitizing those so they have a group profile, means that you're reducing a lot of the risk. You're also aligning a lot of the incentives so that people are working in the right direction, you could say. This is also why we've tried to sort of build this virtuous cycle between market access and financial inclusion, so that through taking investment into their communities or into their farms, they also have a way, an exit route to get access to more profits, better income, in order to then repay those loans. If it was purely an organization offering credit, we personally don't feel that's the right method to improve the livelihoods of these communities, because we're just indebting these groups more if we don't provide them a better way to get a better income. Which is why we focused around the building agricultural data side, and then also building the financial data for these groups to join both of those together and create that virtuous cycle. Third challenge, I think, is one that is an evolving space that we've seen more recently, which is this is a very volatile world, and both with sort of natural disasters and climate change and a lot of disruption, and typically NGO organizations who are supporting these groups predominantly right now have limited term projects. And we've seen, for example, with challenges with Ukraine, the filtering away of some development money into those into funding the support for Ukraine rather than for NGO funding. We need a solution that can be there for a long period of time, which is why for us, we are a for-profit organization with a sustainable business model that survives after an NGO program. We're also really trying to build this as a holistic solution to build corporates and other organizations in that ecosystem together so that this is sustainable longer term. So as I mentioned, sustainable business model. The regulatory sandbox is also a piece which, from our experience, it's very important for us to build from day one fully compliant solutions, both on a financial level and a data level, on a data privacy level, because I think it's very easy for some of these digital solutions to start out and then expand very rapidly without considering those challenges, and then getting stuck somewhat we've got a large number of users with potentially dangerous or non-compliant solutions, and then having challenges and disappearing or struggling from that perspective. So I just wanted to launch into a quick product demo just to show you what this really looks like for the end users. Let me move over to my my other tab here. So just to tell you what you're seeing here, firstly, so this is the myCoop app. As I said, it runs as a web app. It runs in any browser. For a farmer or for a co-op manager who would typically, co-op managers would be typically using this, they would be doing this on a smartphone or a tablet, and it would be them using it for all of the members of their groups. They can install it as an app, but they can also just go to a URL and access it. One of the first things we found, obviously, is it's very important to be able to just manage your members. So we created a directory feature so that each person has their own profile. You can see their members of the group, their membership of the group, and other aspects there. And we also track non-members who are other people within their ecosystem who they work with, such as sprayers and guards and agri-dealers and suppliers as well. But where we really start to gather the data together is in what we call production plans. Today, this is done by a lot of the farmer groups and cooperatives that we work with on paper. They write this down on an A4 piece of paper about how much they think they're going to produce at harvest time, and then how much they actually produce, potentially some quality measurements, and sometimes those get sort of taken by the cooperative organization and analyzed, but typically they're very paper-based. What we've done is sort of look to digitize that, such that, for example, we can see here, this is a farmer who's farming cashew, and he has provided a projection of how much he thinks he's going to produce at harvest time. He then, at harvest time, provides a delivery, and we track the payment of that. We can also then track inputs, whether the spray was applied to the crop as well as other forms of quality measurements and things like that. And we also provide a review function so that you can see and start to incentivize farmers around better behaviors. Can they predict better how much they're going to deliver, or delivering on time, for example. And where this then starts to move in, and I'll just show you, there we go. And then obviously we then provide the aggregation of that for all of the farmers within the cooperative, so that then the co-op manager can start to see how many members are submitting per crop, and average deliveries and things like that. But really where that then starts to fill into our sweet spot is then in the money aspect. So we call it the money tab because it keeps it nice and simple. But here we then start to track that crop yield purchase for that cashew that Richard received from the cooperative. And we start to build that for all the different activities that the cooperative is doing, and start to provide that digital footprint there. And this is really what we then start to use to build that footprint that we can share with the financial services organizations. And obviously from the crop plans and projection sides, that's also what we then enable data sharing with off-takers and supply chain organizations who may want to pre-buy or allocate or buy from these cooperative communities as well. We've also, this is sort of additional information that we look to build in. It's not core to what we do, but it's something that we still think is valuable to, at the time of sort of trying to support these groups, to also feed in learning and other things. So we have built in some learning modules in here as well. What does that look like for an NGO or another organization? Essentially, because we've built all this data and aggregate and pull that together, we manage that, and in fact, it's not a core part of what we do from the smallholder farmers' perspective. So we actually put this data onto the blockchain so that we can't edit it. It's super trustworthy. And it means that then when we're engaging with financial services and other organizations, they know that we can't tamper with that data and falsify it in any sense. But it also means that then we can share this data appropriately with the group's permission with NGOs who are looking to support them, potentially organizations who might want to give them loans or want to buy their crops. And we gather a large amount of sort of detailed information about the farmers, what they're producing, when they're delivering it, the quantities, etc., and can produce, in partnership with our partners, a lot of very detailed information about the groups, and ultimately use that to then help engagement and support for the groups. One last slide, and then I think we could go into the sort of questions and answers here. So that's where we are right now, and I think we're sort of in a phase where we obviously have this product. We're rolling out across Mozambique and in Kenya. One of the other things, we're working on several different sort of growth areas right now that is, I think, sort of painting a picture of where we're going in the future. One of the things we've seen is, so we have another product that is focused around savings groups, village savings and loans associations, and see that there's a graduation from those very sort of informal savings groups into becoming slightly more formalized businesses and moving into cooperatives. And that's something that we're looking to support as a transition between our two solutions, the savings group solution and the cooperative solution, to help formalize them and bring them into commerce in a sense. We mentioned the NGO perspective, and that's why we've actually built an e-voucher solution onto the platform as well, so that NGOs can provide aid inputs, also to sort of guard against some of those sort of natural disaster situations that some of these groups do face around both strengthening their farms, investing in new crop and agriculture practices and things like that. One of the hot topic areas that partly because we're building on blockchain becomes a natural sort of next step in what we're doing is to help these groups to get other forms of income like carbon credit sales because of the evidence of them adopting climate smart agricultural principles. So it's something that we're looking at, but obviously providing another method of income for these groups is very much needed and something we're looking at. As I mentioned, we're sort of our key markets right now, Mozambique and Kenya, but we're actually rolling out into Ghana in the next few weeks, as well as we have some operations in Zambia right now, and our team's in Rwanda, so that's where we want to sort of grow as well. And ultimately, obviously, we are, as I mentioned earlier, a for-profit organization, but very much with an impact focus, and really want to have that balance of this being a commercial ecosystem that we're building, but also really maximize the impact and benefit for the communities that we're working with. So hopefully that was useful and interesting for people considering using digital solutions in these type of contexts. Here's my contact details if you wanted to get in touch or you had any further questions, but happy to go into sort of question and answer session now around the general challenges, specific challenges, or what we do.
Thank you, Matthew. That was very interesting. So just to start the question and answers period, and please everyone, be sure to use either chat or raise your hand. We'll try to monitor both sides and give ample opportunity. So my question to start is, were there actually financial institutions that you were able to provide the data that ended up with a loan issued to the cooperative you were working with?
Yeah, so we're just at the stage where, we've signed MOUs with financial institutions in Mozambique. We are right now discussing the data format of what they want to see in order to see these loans. But from what we've shown them so far, they are confident that they want to work with us, and we're talking sort of commercial terms about them paying effectively. Our business model relies on a commission fee from the financial services organizations for offering loans into these communities. For them, that saves a lot of cost from their side, because right now they don't have great information. It takes them a long time, and they have to send people in cars or on motorbikes in order to gather that information and disperse those loans. So we're not there just yet, but we're very close to be able to doing that, and we have the validation from the organizations that is something they want to do as well.
Great. Well, thank you. Please, everyone, don't feel shy. We're all learning here about the new stuff, but also, please, this is an open forum for comments. And I see here there is a question from Camilla that came in first, our colleague from NCBA. Camilla, would you like to come in and ask your question, please?
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you, Matthew, for your presentation. It's great to see startups. I don't know in which stage of the process you are, but
yeah, very much a startup right now.
Okay, to see startups interested in having a social impact with these organizations and farmers, no? And who need so much support. And so I have two main concerns, and the main one is about the data privacy and ownership, because and so like, how do you manage this, and how can cooperative know that when they provide all this information, it's not going to end up creating problems for them later on.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose there's a couple of things there. So we very much take in fact, we were an EU headquartered organization. So GDPR applies to us with all of our customers, and that includes these groups in Sub-Saharan Africa. And so we have to apply those GDPR principles in how we operate. But to be honest, we would be applying those anyway. We very much believe that this data is owned by those end users and those groups, and we don't share that data without explicit permission from the groups in order to share that. And obviously the trade-off there is they are sharing that data because they want to get access to loans. So so they can't, if they don't share the data, then it becomes very difficult for them to get access to those loans. But we do very much do that on a sort of a granular permissioned level around who they want to share that data with. I'd also say that there are other benefits that we've seen that the groups specifically really value about gathering this data digitally. Partly due to the security aspects, partly because elements like we can do calculations more accurately because we can take the raw numbers and then calculate the price per kilo or things like that, or and do other more complicated calculations for these groups. And we've seen actually comparing groups that have been being digitized compared to those who haven't. Members have moved across to the digital groups because they believe their data is more secure and more accurate, and they want to join these type of digital groups. That is what it is worth saying that obviously it's always a balance, because there are if you put data in the wrong hands, then it can be exploited for the wrong purposes. But we're very much trying to be aware and cognizant of that in how we work.
Thank you. Willie, we had Willie raising his hand. Willie, are you able to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. My name is Willie Nyirigira. I'm from Kigali, Rwanda. I work with the Land O'Lakes Venture 37. I have two questions. One is around the affordability and the appetite of the tool within cooperatives. Mm-hmm. In the countries where you have tried it, do you see cooperatives really understanding the advantage and benefits of it? Like, do they have appetite to get the app, and do they have the affordability to acquire it? Like, how much is it basically per cooperative?
Yeah.
The second one, if you allow,
yeah, please.
The second one is around the challenges you mentioned. I didn't really see the availability and the accuracy of records, and I believe that's one of the issues cooperatives are really lacking. In fact, it's one of those that financial institutions and partners look at them as risky. Some of them really have businesses, but they don't have accurate and quality records to back that up. So how are you going around that issue as well? Okay.
Sure. Okay. So to answer your first piece about both cost and appetite for these groups. So firstly, from a cost perspective, we don't charge the end groups. The way our business model operates is it takes commission fees from those ecosystem connections, essentially. So an MFI, for example, would pay a small commission for offering their loan to a group over the platform. In the same way, an off-taker would pay a small percentage fee for us facilitating the purchase of crops from a cooperative over the platform. We're looking at building some other revenue streams into the model, but again, those are things like transaction fees on vouchers. When there are voucher distributions from NGOs, we would charge a transaction fee for those. And longer term, we're looking at moving to providing our own mobile money solution over the platform, where we would take a small percentage fee, lower than traditional mobile money, for making transactions within sort of the hiveonline ecosystem. And based on our calculations, those revenue streams will support the growth of our business without having to directly monetize the groups who, you know, are trying to grow as much themselves. I think longer term, there may be a more mature sort of premium model or something for more mature cooperatives who definitely see the value in premium features that we would look at. But fundamentally, our ethos and sort of 101 is that we will not charge the low-level groups for the service that we provide. As far as adoption goes, and appetite, I think it's somewhat mixed, partly because it does require some of the big things that groups want are access to finance and access to credit. And as I mentioned earlier, we're nearly there with those. But the challenge is that we have to build up a set of data before that works. So we are very much looking at building in more and more pieces of value before they get access to credit and before they get access to be able to sell to off-takers. But typically we work with NGOs who encourage these groups because this is useful. So we see some groups who are somewhat more organized and more proactive, seeing the value in having their data, as I mentioned earlier, around having that secure data. And, you know, there have been plenty of scenarios of, you know, for example, record books being eaten by termites or pigs, in fact, which have encouraged the use of digital solutions because of that. I think we need to do more, and I think there's always a need to do more there. But we are seeing groups consistently creating production plans and increasingly adding transactions. But there are a few more pieces of that jigsaw puzzle we are adding, which hopefully in the near-term future will really help that model move forward. So that was answering your first part. Your second part, can you just remind me about the second question?
Well, it was just about records, accurate and availability of
accurate records. So I mean, I think there's again, there's always more that can be done, but I think capturing this, one of our beliefs is that payments are important for people because it's based on money, and the further we move away from the payments, the harder it is to get accurate information about what quality was your produce, how many kilos did you provide, etc. So we, in our model, tie a lot of the data capture to the payments that are being made as well. So that our view is if people want to make sure that the payment's right, because that's the money, and hence they should be making sure that the data is right that's linked to that as part of that picture. We do build in analytics to look for outliers, etc. And again, there's more we can do there. But from the data quality that we've seen from their paper-based records, there's a sort of sizable increase in quality just by digitizing and allowing this data to be managed in this way.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll have the next question. Rebecca from ICRG, would you like to ask your question since you are here with us?
Sure, and actually, I'll now that I'm understanding how new your product is, Matthew, I'll rephrase my question a bit. First of all, thank you so much. I'm excited to see where you go with this. You know, we've seen lots of digital tools evolve, come and go over time, right? And how, you know, I love the fact that you're keeping the sort of member business ratio, understanding that production calendar. You haven't had enough production seasons yet to see how the farmers are using that to in fact improve their, you know, mitigate their losses and in fact get more money in their pockets. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what your expectations are, since you haven't quite gotten to where the evidence is there. What are some of the key metrics that you're looking at around that? Thanks.
So ultimately, if we were just going to be counting the size of loans, as I mentioned earlier, that's not what we're about and what we want to achieve. So yes, we want to track those loans, but we also want to be able to track that those are being spent correctly for investment purposes. One of the things we look forward to the measuring is, because we're measuring both the input, or the sort of the investment side, but also the output side in agricultural output. We're very much wanting to see the correlation in those, because otherwise that credit is leaking into other types of spending that might not be investment. So, for example, one of the use cases that we're just starting with right now is providing support for sprayers of cashew trees in Mozambique. So that effectively, if you spray your cashew tree, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get about double the amount of cashew produce. But a lot of farmers don't have the means to be able to pay for that spraying. That is a relatively simple equation for us to look at around both tracking the investment into these farmers to be able to pay for spraying, the evidence of that spraying actually happening, and then looking at the yield for those cashew harvests at the end of that season. Those are the type of sort of measurements we want to look at, and the correlations we want to look at, to make sure that that investment is being spent in the right place. Now, obviously, there's many inputs to that, including education as well as the finance pieces. But that's one of the things we're sort of looking to focus on. The other piece, which I think is a bigger challenge, but it is something that we want to target, is that sort of level one of, I think, the MFI story is providing loans to these groups, which obviously is a challenge because of these boundaries, the physical boundaries that make it difficult. But from reading and researching in the area, the majority of those MFI loans are right now being spent on sort of working capital needs. And really, with things like climate change coming around the corner, there is a need to increase the size of loans into these groups so that they can start to invest in more climate smart solutions and become more resilient as well. And our belief is that by providing better data to the MFIs, over and above just crossing that digital divide, we can actually encourage those MFIs to feel more confident that they can provide larger loans in order for them to be invested better. Now, that's a grand vision, and I'm sure there's sort of many things that we need to be aware of and look through, but that's very much where we're headed in what we're trying to do.
Thank you. I think we have just about time for one more comment or question. We have several colleagues from WOCU. Would anybody want to share the impression or any comment? And do I see anyone raising the hand? I guess not. Yes, please.
I have one here. I don't think it's really a question, or rather, it's a very good, I think. Thanks for the presentation. It's a wonderful solution. What I'm looking at in terms of integration to the supply side of finance. How is it working? I mean, if reports generated from the solution, what is the reliability when it comes to those reports seeking finance? Just to build an entire ecosystem of flow of finance to everyone.
Thanks, Alfred. Alfred is in Kenya.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for the question, Alfred. Again, sort of, it is early days as far as our monitoring of that. But again, one of the things that we, at least sort of anecdotally from talking with off-takers and middlemen and the industry, is that a lot of the time that data isn't captured, right? A lot of the supply chain partners do provide finance in order to secure crops that isn't recorded at a granular level at all, and isn't tracked even necessarily as a loan past giving a wad of cash to a middleman. So obviously I know that there's an accounting process that takes place after that, but our view is very much that we're trying to capture this at point of interaction, and that's why we have an app for the cooperatives. We do now have an app for the sprayers to be managing their aspects, and we will be integrating with the other types of payment solutions to be able to track those at a granular level. So, for example, we're integrating with existing mobile money solutions so we can see those payments coming in, but also we'll be integrating with other solutions over time as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, Matthew. I'm looking at the clock. We want to finish promptly at 10, but before we get there, I wanted to ask Silandi, our communications manager at ICRG, to please administer a Menti question.
Yes, would be happy to, Barbara. Thanks so much. And thank you, Matthew, for the really incredible and informative presentation. And I think we did have a couple of more questions in the chat as well, but maybe we can save those and have Matthew respond to those and send that back in an email after the conclusion of the session today. But we wanted to take a moment just to ask you all what your single biggest takeaway from today's session was. And so we did send an invitation in the chat box, and so you're more than welcome to enter into Menti via the Zoom app itself, but you can also enter in by scanning the QR code that you see on your screen, or going to www.menti.com and entering in the code 16882677. And so we'll give everyone a few moments there to enter in your response. If you have any questions or need any assistance, I see 6 people are in the session right now. I'm going to ask any questions or if you need any technical assistance in the meeting chat. All right, great. So we have our responses and answers coming in. And tools for collecting data from co-ops farmers are growing in number. Making sure the data is applied is key. How are we using the data? How is it benefiting the member? Great takeaway there. Another that we have, a simplified tool like this is going to be impactful for farmer groups. Thank you very much. Innovative platforms can be customized to co-ops' unique needs. Absolutely. Just a couple more seconds in case any more responses come in. Let's see, this gives us another tool to use when working with farmer groups. This link to financial institutions is one aspect that has been missing. There are benefits to individuals as well as to co-ops and organizations. Planning work to ensure loans are used for productive purposes, including climate finance. Absolutely. And thank you all so much for participating in this short little Menti at the end. We'll leave it open. And so you are more than welcome to enter into your response, even after the session closes. So thanks again so much for all of your responses, and I'll hand it back over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Silandi. Yes, well, all I would like to do is again thank our guests, all our participants, and everyone who is interested. We will send a follow-up with a presentation that we've just heard, plus the questions and answers that were captured through various media, and which Matthew will, I'm sure, be glad to answer. So here at the last slide, we do provide with links to both our organization, OCDC, and ICRG, its research arm, and to hiveonline, which has made their presentation. It would be great if sometime from today, maybe 6 months, we could have another presentation, or if not presentation, at least a contact information to know how things are progressing for you and how you are indeed able to gather more data, both for your organizations, for the participating, for the individuals. All of these different points of contact and communication are so important, and the tools that are making it easy are simply amazing. So thank you so much, everyone, and please watch out for our next bi-monthly virtual learning hour. We're going to send, as usual, invitations, and we'll have everyone hopefully joining us again. Thank you so much, and goodbye. See you again.
Thank you,
Bye.
Barbara.